Make sure in sales you always begin with the end in mind. So at the beginning of every single call that you have with a prospect, make sure you talk to them about what will likely happen at the end of the call. If one of the two options is that you end the sales process and the other is that you move on to a clearly defined next step or another conversation, then tell them that. Talk to them about that at the beginning of the conversation. Pre-sell where you're going to go next. Make sure that you clearly articulate what the potential next step would be and enroll them in whether or not they're okay with that. Now, here's one caveat. As you are doing that, if I were to say to a prospect, hey, at the end of this call or at any point during this call, you may realize we're not a good fit. Would you be willing to tell me no? And they'd say, yes, of course. I'd say, okay, alternatively, we may realize we're moving in the right direction and gaining some momentum. If that were the case, I would ask that you get your calendar out and we book the next meeting. Would you be all right with that? And they will say, yes. Now, once I have done that, I've relieved all the anxiety that I know I will have at the end of the meeting of trying to drive a next step. I've gotten their permission to drive toward the next step, and I've gotten rid of any uncertainty on what will happen next. Additionally, I've given them permission to tell me no. Now, here's a caveat. You want to make sure you don't put yourself into a box. You want to make sure that you don't tell the prospect exactly what's going to happen next, because you never know what your current conversation could bring up. I once worked with a sales professional who would always say, hey, we're going to get into X, Y, and Z today. And then he'd give them permission to tell him no, which was great. But when he would talk about next steps, he would say, our next conversation will involve this person and this person. Or our next meeting will be me giving you a quote and reviewing the proposal that I brought for you. And while sometimes that was true, he was really putting himself into a box by telling the prospect that's what was going to happen next, when he didn't know for sure that's what was going to happen next. So pre-sell the next steps, but keep it open-ended for you to be able to trust your process and your discernment at the end of the conversation to determine truly what's best for you and for them.